everybody. I hope you enjoyed the meditation in the first half, doing some mindfulness meditation. And in a way, I want to continue that theme in the second half of awareness. And we're going to be talking about the perfection of wisdom, the perfection of wisdom. So we've been going through the 6 perfections of the altruistic Buddhist path over the last few months, with a month on each one. And we arrived last week at the last of the 6 perfections, the highest. It's known as perfection supreme, the perfection of wisdom. And there's a very good talk by Arijit on going through that, which is on YouTube. So if you look for North London Buddhist Centre on YouTube, you'll find Arijit's talk on the perfection of wisdom there. So do have a listen if you're interested. But one of the things that he talked about in that talk was one of the strange, brief wisdom texts from ancient Buddhism, which this book, Buddhist Wisdom Books, has got the Heart Sutra in it. And the Heart Sutra is what he talked about last week. So I thought I would introduce the Heart Sutra. It's rather an ambitious thing to do because it assumes loads of knowledge of Buddhism, even though it's only 1 page long. I'm going to hand it out to you so you can have a look at it later. So it's brief. But I'm not going to try and fill all that in. I'm just going to try and give you an impression of it. And I want to start off that impression by asking you to imagine something. So I want you to imagine that for some mysterious reason, you wake up in a completely unexpected place. Maybe you've been in a coma, maybe you've been enchanted by a wizard, I don't know, maybe you've just woken up after a long, long sleep like Rip Van Winkle. And when you open your eyes, you're in a lovely, cool, shady English wood. And the first thing you notice is the fragrance of bracken and heather and lovely green vegetation, cool green vegetation around you. And the second thing that you notice is the sounds of birds singing. In fact, you can actually see a robin singing on a nearby tree, and there's other birds singing as well. And then the third thing you notice is people. You're not alone in this wood, and the people around you, in between the trees, are dancing. Dancing in a rather graceful sort of manner. Yeah. And so here you are. Now, probably if that happened to me, I'd probably panic a bit. What's going on? Where am I? You know? But just imagine that doesn't happen. Imagine that as you wake up, it's just completely natural, completely delightful. And you just feel completely at home. And you're just full of appreciation of the beauty. And even though, after being lying down for such a long time, when you sit up, you're quite stiff and there's a bit of pain and maybe you need the loo. But all that is also part of this total experience, which just seems beautiful. So even the fact of the pains and the difficulties is absolutely fine. Everything seems to fit in. It's absolutely fine. And this is a kind of experience you may have had if you've done a lot of meditation. Sometimes this kind of thing will happen spontaneously in meditation, where you're sitting there full of your usual troubles and concerns. And then after a while, things calm down, you're very in your body, and you just realize, well, everything's fine. It's all right. Even the things that are not fine are fine. It doesn't mean that you're going to let injustice happen. It doesn't mean that you won't deal with issues, your health issues and all that kind of thing in your life. But what you realize is that you don't need to regard the world as against you. You can regard the world as full of treasure and full of richness, full of interest and fascination and so on. And this experience is the experience of openness. Now, openness is one way of translating the old Buddhist word shunyata, and it's the central theme of the Heart Sutra. The central theme of the Heart Sutra is openness, is having that kind of response to your experience, being completely open and delighted in the richness of human experience. And then what happens after a while is that you realize, actually, this isn't so unfamiliar. Yeah, you know where you are. Oh, yes, of course. And then you reckon, oh, that's my sister dancing over there, and then you can go home and you realize, oh, yeah, right. Yeah. But you that same experience persists, at least to some extent. That even in your normal environment, you go back home, there's your toothbrush, there's your toilet, and there's your mum or whoever there is around, and it's good. It's all right. In a way, you're welcoming, you're open to it, the good and the bad. You're open to it and you're welcoming it. And your familiar life comes back to you. You remember the labels for everything. But the thing that had happened while you were in that wood is you realized, okay, that may be an oak tree, but I don't need to call it an oak tree. It's just something that's an element of flow in my experience. That was a robin singing. I don't need to identify it. There are people dancing. The fact I didn't realize at first that was my sister is one of them. That's fine. I don't need to know everything. I don't need to have everything worked out. I don't need to be dominated by my expectations, my preconceptions, my worries, and so on as well. That, oh dear, that bothers me. That's frightening, and so on. But in this mood of openness, let's call it a mood for now, because it may not last forever. But this mood of openness, it's as if everything is welcome. Everything is allowed to be as it is. And that's one way, at least, of looking at this Buddhist idea of openness. Some people call it the open dimension. Yeah. Does that sort of make sense? Can you, I'm sure that we're probably, none of us here is in that place all the time, maybe not very often even. But can you relate to that? So the second little image I want to use is looking at a very basic Buddhist teaching, which is very closely related to openness. And this is the idea of no self. So the suggestion in Buddhism is that our impression is that we are a little box, as it were, a little me-shaped box, looking out through little holes in that box, protecting ourselves against the world. This is an illusion. It's something that we've created. We don't have to relate in that kind of way. So I was thinking, what could you, if you're not a box, if you're not a little embattled castle, even if you're not just a human body, just made of meat, then what are you? What is going on there? And one thing that came to me was to think of the Amazon River when it emerges into the Atlantic Ocean. The greatest river in the world, huge amounts of fresh water are pouring out. And apparently, do correct me if I'm wrong, but apparently the river doesn't stop at the river mouth. The river carries on out into the great Atlantic Ocean. And many, many miles away from the mouth of the Amazon, you can still detect the fresh water. The ecology is different. The species living there are different. So it's as if you imagine you're like that, you're like a river that's emerged into an ocean. So it's not that you've vanished. It's not that you don't exist. But it's that you are in intimate connection with what's around you, like a river going into an ocean. You can't tell, this is where I stop, this is where other people start. You have a feeling of porosity, a feeling of overlapping with others, and a feeling of constant flow as well. And the image of the river is one very, very often used in Buddhism to describe human experience. So there's that sense, that things are not, you're not something boxed, you're not something static, you're not something fixed, but you're a flow and you're flowing out into something vast and in a way and unknown. So I don't know if that, maybe that's a bit more abstract than the one of you waking up in a wood, but I hope that gives you some sense of this idea of no self. It doesn't mean that you don't exist. What it means is that you're not separate, that you are interconnected, that you're affected by all sorts of things, you affect all sorts of things, just like that river pouring into the Atlantic Ocean. So I hope that gives you some sense of these two things. Now, the idea of no self comes up very early on in Buddhism, and Buddhists were trying to teach this. How do you teach this idea of no self? It's a very difficult thing to do. And one thing they did was to say, well, let's say that what you are is you're made up of a bundle. We could call it, maybe like the Amazon is made up of many tributaries. You're made up of a bundle of different streams. Some of these are physical, they're to do with your body. Some of them are mental, they're to do with your perceptions, they're to do with what you recognize, what you call things, they're to do with your thought patterns and habits. They're to do with your very awareness itself. And all these things were identified strongly in early Buddhism. And people started saying, what you are is, you're not what you think. You're not this fixed identity that you strongly associate with, but you're a bundle of all sorts of flowing patterns. But these, after a while, were also fixated upon. And people say, oh, right, we've got it all sorted out now. And what the Heart Sutra and the other Perfect Wisdom Sutras, the sutra, by the way, means an early Buddhist teaching. What these sutras were saying was, hang loose, be open. Don't assume you've got it all worked out. Don't assume it's all there. Yeah. So that's the preamble to looking at what the sutra says, what it's trying to do. It's trying to introduce you to openness, so that you're open even about Buddhism. So the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, they try to get you to hang loose from all ideas, including Buddhist ideas. So I'm going to go through that sutra. I'm going to hand it out later, and Jenny can put it online as well, for those of you online. And then we're going to have a chance just to talk about our response to it a bit in smaller groups, and then we'll have plenty of time at the end where we can go back to it and see if you've got any questions about it. It's something that I've loved for many years, and I've worked on translations of it and so on. So I'm really interested in it, but I don't want to say I've got it sorted out. I'm a complete beginner, really. And that's the best thing with Buddhism. Always stay a beginner. Don't become an expert, whatever you do. So I'm going to read, I think I'll read the whole thing first. I do need a clock, actually. Do you know where the clock's gone? It's okay. You're right. So this is how it goes. On. I salute the abundant lady, noble, leaping wisdom. The Bodhi-hero, noble, master, kind gazer, was practicing the ocean deep life of leaping wisdom. And he gazed down, seeing only the 5 segments of oneself and total experience, and knowing they were essentially completely open. Kind gazer said, right here and now, sharp eye, is the person he's talking to, is called sharp eye. The world you experience and your body are completely open. And open reality is just what you call the world you experience and your body. Anything in the world or body is completely open. Anything in open reality appears as the world and the body. And the same goes for all responses of like and dislike. They're completely open. Every time you notice or recognize something, that's completely open. Every little urge or tendency you feel is completely open. Your split awareness itself is completely open. That is split into inside and outside subject and object. Right here and now, sharp eye, everything you can name or think about is completely open. Everything is without identifiable characteristics. Everything neither comes into being nor finishes, neither morally bad nor pure, neither lacking in perfection nor perfect. Next, sharp eye, get into a completely open meditation. There's no world or body. There's no response of like or dislike. There's nothing to notice or recognize. There are no little urges or tendencies. There's even no divided awareness. There's no senses or mind sense, nothing to sense, no ideas or images, no sense awareness, not even a mental consciousness. And in this completely open meditation, there's no unknowing. There are no karma formations, nor all the things they lead to, up to decay and death. But there's no stopping of these 12 links either. There's no frustration. There's no craving to make you frustrated. There's no peaceful cessation of all frustration, nor is there any spiritual path to lead to it. And there, in this completely open meditation, there's no real knowing. There are no Buddha achievements, but there are no lack of Buddha achievements. Next, sharp eye, it's because of their complete indifference to achievements, and because they rely on leaping wisdom, that a Bodhi-hero can live with no barriers trapping their mind or heart. Having burst through all barriers, they don't panic. They're no longer upside down, and finally they achieve enlightenment. Every Buddha throughout time with just this leaping wisdom fully wakes up to perfect and complete enlightenment. Next, learn the great secret name of Leaping Wisdom. It's the Lady of Full Knowing's secret name, the best name, the name as good as a Buddha, the name that calms all frustration. It's true and it works. It's the secret name spoken by Leaping Wisdom herself. Here it is. And this is the mantra that comes at the end of the sutra. Gate, gate, para gate, para samgate, bodhi, swaha, which roughly means leap, leap, leap over. All of you leap over. Awake. That's it. Now you can imagine that, well, you may not be able to imagine this because it's only one page, but I know someone who's been working on this, studying this and meditating on this for their whole life, and they're in their late 80s now. It's something that you could just go back to and back to over and over again. It's full of richness, full of mystery, full of bafflement and all sorts of weird things. So all I can do is give you a bit of an impression of some of it now as to what's going on with it. And I hope in a way the introduction has given you a sense of where it's trying to come from, introducing that wonderful freshness of having a totally open mind. And on the one hand, realizing that that openness is the same thing as ordinary experience. But on the other hand, you can go into an open meditation where ordinary experience just vanishes away and everything is purely open like the blue sky. So those are two messages from it. And the message is there's a drama in it, because what we have, first of all, is an invocation to this lady here. Now, this lady, does anybody know what she is called? Anyone come across? It's quite a famous statue. It's in Indonesia. She is called Leaping Wisdom. And that's the translation I've used, Prajna Parinita, which means the wisdom that crosses to the other shore, that leaps across. And she's a Buddha. She's a female Buddha. Sometimes people think that Buddhas have to be male, but no. In fact, Buddhas are non-gendered, really. But she is usually shown in female form. And so the invocation is to her as a goddess, as it were, or as a Buddha, as a female Buddha. So we have that sort of devotional element as well as the teachings. I'll show this closer to the camera as well. Can we see that all right? So that's Prajna Parinita. And then this figure here, does anybody know who this is, the wooden statue? Any ideas? So she's called Kuan Yin. And Kuan Yin is the Chinese form of the Indian Bodhisattva of compassion. And in India, usually in male form, but as I say, it's very non-gendered, really. And therefore in China, usually in female form, or you can be either, really. And so when it says noble master, kind gazer is a translation of Avalokiteshvara, the name of the Bodhisattva of compassion. It means the master who looks down in compassion. So therefore, kind gazer. And he or she is the one teaching the sutra and teaching it to sharp eye. And sharp eye represents more limited forms of wisdom that's very good at categorizing things, very good at understanding psychology of the mind. Shariputra was a real historical person who was a disciple of the Buddha and who was well known for his ability, well, in fact, one of the inventors of Buddhist psychology. But he's now being taught from the angle of compassion and kindness and saying, don't get too caught up in all your categorization and understanding everything so precisely. Remember that beyond that is openness, is perfect wisdom, and that's being taught by the Bodhisattva of compassion. Now, I was thinking of actually going through some of these verses, but I think that won't give us any time to talk about it. So maybe I'll just read it through once more, then I'll hand them out, and we'll go into groups of 3 or 4 or something like that, and just see what responses you have to it. I don't know, maybe for some of you, what on earth is this about? Maybe others feel, oh yeah, I can see there's something interesting there. And then you can come back and we'll have questions and discussion. Okay, so reading through it, and if Jenny hasn't already done so, if you want to put it online so people can see it. Jenny's our online maestro, she's done so great. So the heart of Leaping Wisdom, which is the Heart Sutra. The heart. Amazing, it calls it that, isn't it? It's the heart. It's all the old wisdom sutras condensed into one page. And very, very popular in China. Om. I salute the abundant lady, noble leaping wisdom. Here she is. The Bodhi-hero, master kind gazer, was practicing the ocean deep life of leaping wisdom. And he gazed down, seeing only the 5 segments of oneself and total experience, and knowing that they were essentially completely open. Kind gazer said, right here and now, Sharpa, the world you experience and your body are completely open. And open reality is just what you call the world and body. Anything in the world or body is completely open. Anything in open reality appears as the world and body. All responses of like and dislike in the same way are completely open. Every time you notice or recognize something is completely open. Every little urge or tendency you feel is completely open. Your split awareness, your consciousness itself, is completely open. Right here and now, Sharpai, everything you can name or think about is completely open. Everything is without identifiable characteristics. Everything neither comes into being nor finishes. Everything is neither morally bad nor pure. Everything is neither lacking in perfection nor perfect. Next, Sharpai, get into a completely open meditation. There's no world or body. There's no response of like or dislike. There's nothing to notice or recognize. There are no little urges or propensities. There's even no divided awareness. And in this completely open meditation, there are no senses or mind sense, nothing to sense, no ideas or images, no sense awareness, not even mental consciousness, no unknowing, no karma formations, or all the things they lead up to decay and death. But there's no stopping of these 12 links either. There's no frustration, there's no craving to make you frustrated, there's no peaceful cessation of all frustration, nor is there a spiritual path to lead to it. There's no real knowing, and there are no Buddha achievements, but there's no lack of Buddha achievements. Next, Sharpai, it's because of their complete indifference to achievements, and because they rely on leaping wisdom, that a Bodhi-hero, a Bodhisattva, can live with no barriers trapping their mind or heart. Having burst through all barriers, they do not panic. They're not any longer upside down. And finally, they achieve enlightenment. And every Buddha throughout time with just this leaping wisdom fully wakes up to complete and perfect enlightenment. Next, learn the secret name of leaping wisdom, the Lady of Full Knowing's secret name. The best name, as good as a Buddha, calms all frustration. It's true and it works. Spoken by leaping wisdom herself. Here it is. Gate gate, para gate, para sangate, bodhi, swaha. Leap, leap, leap over. All of you leap over. Awake. That's it. I'll just say one more thing before we go into our groups, which is that a lot of the sutra is referring to all sorts of Buddhist teachings and saying, remember, helpful though they are open. So in this open meditation, there's no, the Four Noble Truths, no. The path to enlightenment, no. The categories of the psychology of a person, no. But then when you emerge from the meditation, they're back, but with a completely new attitude to them. So just bear that one in mind. And the other thing to bear in mind is this is leaping wisdom. This is the 6th of perfections. We've done 5 previous ones. There's a long path that leads to this process. You may find yourself leaping straight into perfect wisdom and having these panoramic experiences, but you may find it's just gradually improving yourself. And this sutra doesn't go into that gradual process. It's what's called the process of sudden enlightenment. And it's attempting to just take you there very quickly, which may or may not happen. Okay, see what came up. Any questions came up, or conclusions, or worries, or anything? Yeah.
I had a question. How would you define enlightenment in this term? Is enlightenment just realizing you're no longer separate to other things?
Maybe it is. Yeah, maybe it is. I mean, in a way, one of the things that this sutra, because this sutra, Buddhism had already been going for 1,000 years when this sutra arises. And one of the things this would say is, don't get too hung up with any ideas, including the idea of enlightenment, or including thinking what you know what enlightenment might be. Just follow the path of the perfections, open more and more, let go more and more, and see what happens. And one thing that will happen is your wisdom will get stronger, but also your kindness will get stronger. And those are the two important signs. There needs to be a growing sense of connection and kindness with other people. And let's not worry about when you get to the exact point, oh, now they're enlightened, now they're not. See what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I'm avoiding your question, but I think that's the best way to do it. Any other thoughts? Yes.
We had a reflection in our group about the kind of energy in the Heart Sutra, like the idea of leaping in meditation felt quite energetic.
It's true.
And like how that's kind of been a bit of tension with some of the preconceptions maybe we had about meditation, that it's about relaxation or about, but I've heard something about like stopping struggling in meditation. And I thought that was really interesting extra dimension to it.
That's a really interesting point, isn't it? Yeah, the active idea of leaping wisdom. When obviously meditation is also about calming down, letting go, stopping struggling, as you say. And in fact, the Tibetans, when they talk about meditation, they talk about it having what they call the stopping phase and the realizing phase. Stop and realize. So realizing is a leap, because what you're doing is you're going beyond your previous preconceptions. But you can't make yourself do that. All you can really do is to stop enough that you're open to that realizing happening. So there's a little bit of a paradox there. It's a leap, but it's also not doing anything. Whatever that means.
So once you've leapt, then what? You have to just sort of let go because you've leapt.
Well, maybe the rest of your life is as a kangaroo, and you do nothing but leaping. I don't. But the original metaphor for paramita means going across. And one of the metaphors, I mentioned that the river is often used in Buddhism as a metaphor for the whole mind, as the flow of the river. There's also the sense of the river of suffering and crossing over from the unsafe shore to the safe shore. So you get that metaphor very often being used. So you can see it as being, in that sounds as if you've done it, doesn't it? And I think that's what the Heart Sutra is. I don't think you've done it, but there is a sense in which you can get beyond suffering and beyond difficulty. Because we create so much of it through our own preconceptions and ideas. And that is crossing over to the other shore of the flood. And that's where the idea, so I've called it leaping, which is a bit of going a little bit far with it maybe, but I thought maybe that's why I might just call it transcendence. Sounds a bit technical and I don't know, doesn't it? Transcendence. Leaping, I prefer that. And I didn't get the idea, but I got it from Han Shan, who's this brilliant Chinese commentator on the Heart Sutra. Who's really fantastic, has these incredible insights into how the whole thing works. One of thousands of commentators on it. It's produced so much literature. Now, if you do want to have a look at it a bit more, the thing I would recommend is a book by Sangharakshita called, what's it called? Wisdom Beyond Words. Wisdom Beyond Words, yeah. And there's also a lecture that he's given, which you can find on Free Buddhist Audio on the Heart Sutra. But there's loads of other really good stuff. I like Red Pine, for example, who I assume is an American teacher from his name, but I'm not quite sure. Anyway, he's done a lovely translation in the commentary, Red Pine Heart Sutra. And of course, there's loads of stuff online, some of it complete rubbish. So, well, more rubbish. Any other thoughts? Anything coming up from the comments?
Yes, here we go. I was wondering how to let go of your attachments and goals and just live in your experience in the moment. It's much easier in theory than in practice. Whenever I try to let go, I just find myself clinging onto the idea of letting go, and I'm not quite sure how to break the cycle. Something we can relate to. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, so how do you let go of this attachment to goals and trying to achieve? And maybe in a way, don't be too worried about it. Of course, we do have goals. If you want to catch a train, you've got a goal of catching that train, haven't you? So it's not there's anything wrong with that. It's more if you're stuck in that, that's the issue. So sometimes give yourself a rest from it. Sometimes sit down with your diary and plan things and have ideas about things. That's all right. But maybe sometimes that's what meditation is for. So sometimes don't try too hard in the meditation. See if you can meditate by opening. And that's what, I think Gugisaki was doing that quite well in the meditation we were doing beforehand. And you just imagine that thing of having woken up in the wood, surrounded by strange things going on. And that, in a way, that's what's happened. We wake up in this moment in our lives, and we're surrounded by total weirdness going on the whole time. But if you can just be open to that and just take it in, and even find things to delight in it, then you can be more open and less goal-oriented, because you've already got it. It's already here now. But that can just become an idea which allows you to give yourself a hard time. Why can't I let go? Why can't I open up? Don't worry about it. Sometimes in meditation, you can just open. The reason that meditation helps with that is because it simplifies your experience. Usually it's really hard to let go if you're packed in on the Central Line trying to get to Tottenham Court Road, and there's a load of hubbub and screaming from the tracks and worrying about your appointments, all that kind of thing. So meditation is trying to go to the opposite extreme, where you keep things really simple. Just sit quietly and comfortably, nothing going on, nothing to worry about, one hopes, or at least nothing you have to do at that moment, at least. Just your eyes closed and just be there in that wood, if you can. Good luck with that. Any other thoughts?
I have a question. I'm not sure if I can formulate it quite well, but it's if you say that in the ideal world you reach that enlightenment and you stop labeling things, to me it just sounds very sort of passive. I'm wondering where would any agency come from? Like what?
Well, it's a bit speculative, isn't it? Because I'm not there, so I'm not quite sure what it'd be like. I mean, I know that the Buddha was not passive. So the tradition says the Buddha had got to that point, but yet he and many other Buddhists down the ages, male and female, have been teaching, active, traveling. He never stayed more than one night under a roof, the Buddha, except in the rainy season. He was traveling the whole time. He didn't have a home. And this is not unusual. There was Swan Sang, whose favourite text was the Heart Sutra, and he travelled from China to India in about the year 600. It took him literally years to make that journey across the Gobi Desert, across the Himalayas, through into India, looking for some of the old Buddhist teachings to bring back to China. So definitely activity is there, isn't it? But one clue in the Heart Sutra is that there are two phases. It says at one point, get into a completely open meditation. So that's when you're in the state of mind where you're no longer labeling anything. So you need that for refreshment. But it doesn't say that in the first part. In the first part it says, remember that your ordinary experience, through your senses, and your feelings, your preferences, all that kind of thing, they themselves are open already in reality. So you can still do your labeling. You can still make decisions. You can still have priorities. But yet you know that underlying all that is this open dimension. So that's my sense of where that might be coming from. Mm-hmm. Remember that you need that nourishing phase of nothing to do, nothing to happen. That you just be one of those ancient Chinese sages that sits there and becomes like an old tree, which is very impressive, wonderful, but doesn't make the world a better place. And the world needs improvement. Mm-hmm.